Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, live from New Orleans, Louisiana, here to lead you through these hard times, Daddy, with episode 697 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened across NXT and AEW over the last week. Silver King is taping this late Thursday night from his hotel room, so my voice may sound slightly different than usual, but we are still here to deliver a full breakdown of those brands and a look ahead at what's to come at NXT Vengeance Day and AEW Grand Slam Australia. We're not wasting any additional time off the top. Allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about the five.
You know the drill. Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. You know where to reach us. You can also email us, by the way, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news posts on Friday. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. As I said, we're not wasting time on this episode. We're going to kick it off with NXT. We're going to move into AEW. There are timestamps in the episode description if you want to jump between one and the other. As always, I hope you are listening to the entire show. Before we get into the breakdown of NXT, I did want to mention Duke Hudson was apparently released in January, this according to Fightful, though he has since made it quite clear that he's no longer with WWE. It was easy to see that he really wasn't going to be a main roster guy. He had enough charisma to be a second in a group in NXT, and he was super entertaining, and he put on some damn good matches. I mean, there was some meat there from Duke Hudson, no question about it. But even if he got called up, he would have been jobber fodder. He just would not have ultimately made it. 6 years in NXT, plus his age. These are the types of people that ultimately get cycled out, and he had a great run. My bigger concern is why they have not moved forward. Something with Andre Chase, something with Thea Hale, especially. Like, where has she gone off to? Now, if she's injured and something's going on, all right, that's understandable. But she's just disappeared, and there's no good reason why. So we'll have to figure that out as things go. Let's go ahead and talk about what happened on NXT this week. Bayley and Roxanne Perez hit the ring for a summit with Julia, but before the champion even got out there, Perez crowed about setting the Royal Rumble time record for the women and eliminating Julia from the match. Roxy said Bayley is in NXT because she got her ass kicked on SmackDown. She hasn't found her footing on Raw, and she wants to be atop the best women's division in WWE. She said all her role models like Bayley don't want to help. They're just standing in her way. Bayley completely cut her off, saying Roxy doesn't get it. She hopes Perez exceeds all her accomplishments because she's an NXT original who worked with Dusty Rhodes and built the brand from the ground up. Bayley said she would be fine without winning the NXT title again. Meanwhile, it's all Roxy knows, and she's even losing her best friend over it, referring, of course, to Cora Jade. Perez says she has no friends or mentors or equals when it comes to the title. Julia cut both of them off, saying one of them will survive Beautiful Madness at Vengeance Day. I guess the presumption being the one who gets pinned does not get to survive her. Charlotte Flair then interrupted, getting a great reaction. With cheers, Flair put Perez over for being the Iron Woman of the Rumble. She put Julia over, saying the hype about her is real. She put over the NXT women's division as the greatest. And she seemingly put over Bayley also, but she didn't say anything. I think she did the 4 horsemen gesture, but like the cameras missed it. They saw Bayley doing it, but not Charlotte. But she said she's better than all of them. Cora then attacked Bayley and Julia from behind with a kendo stick. She even swung it at Perez. She got out of dodge, though. So look, this segment did not need Charlotte. But I'm going to be fair, because she was far, far better here than she was on Raw. That's mostly because she had home cooking in NXT, and she said more about others than herself, but it was technically an improvement. The hotness of this all, though, was Roxy and Bayley at the start, tearing into each other, taking opposing sides in what looks to be a multi-month feud, potentially. Bayley's promo individually was probably the best part of NXT. It was a killer. better than most of what she's done the last 9 months on the main roster ever since WrestleMania. Perez had one of her strongest promos, I think, in her entire NXT career. I'm not saying the best, but up there for sure. That's precisely why this didn't need Charlotte, and frankly, it didn't even need Julia. It now feels like they're going to wind up fighting at NXT Stand and Deliver on WrestleMania weekend, though that's still ways away. It would be quite something for Bayley to go from winning the WWE Women's Championship at WrestleMania last year to only booked on NXT, but with 3 full months still to go, perhaps she wraps up this feud with Perez on TV later this month, early March, and then gets a separate Mania booking. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Bayley later demanded from Ava a singles match against that bitch, to which Ava delivered her best line ever. Which one? Bayley versus Cora is set for next week. Ava even confirmed Bayley was okay that she did the match because she has an Elimination Chamber qualifier on Monday. What's really interesting is Bayley is going to, in 3 straight matches next week, fight 3 women who went to autograph signings or found her and got pictures with her when they were little girls and wanted to be professional wrestlers. So she's going to fight Lyra Valkyria, she's going to fight Cora Jade, and she's going to fight Roxanne Perez all next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday. What I liked was that Ava actually mentioned this, like, hey, this is a conflict here. Like, are you sure you're cool with that? It was her best moment on the show, that and the whole "which bitch," line, on a show that really was not Ava's best, both in character and in reality as well. Obafemi backstage said he runs NXT from an in-ring perspective. He said he'll show A-Town Down Under exactly that. He also dismissed Trick Williams as a partner, saying he didn't really owe him anything. Trick later said he didn't need to game plan with Femi. His only goal is to drop both the heels' bitch asses, prove he deserves a title match, and give Femi a receipt. The heels later cut a walk and talk promo to the ring, saying they run NXT, they're the best team in WWE, and they cannot be denied. Of course, it got contentious when each of them wanted the NXT title. So we had Oba and Trick against A-Town Down Under. The crowd was awesome during Femi's entrance. Oba cut off Trick's music, so the crowd kept going, whoop that Trick, in between, woo. So it was like, woo, whoop that Trick, and over again. It was great. The faces predictably argued, with Grayson Waller taking them out via Tope con Hero. Austin Theory then took out Williams with a rolling blockbuster. Theory also dropped an elbow off the barricade, but Trick countered a rolling move back inside. Femi stacked the heels for a double Samoan drop, did a toss slam on Theory before Trick tagged himself in. Williams caught Waller with Trouble in Paradise for a broken fall. Theory brought Femi over the ropes, countering fall from Grace. Eddie Thorpe then ran in, lashing Trick across the back with a strap. Not the best visual there. Before Waller caught him with a rolling flatliner and got the win, so Waller pinned Trick. Then Thorpe stared down Femi while holding the strap before lashing Trick another dozen times. Now, look, the first lash in particular was a bit, let's say, problematic due to the placement and, history and, it being February and all that. The rest were, I guess you could say, much more wrestling adjacent. But it was certainly a decision to do this and to do it now. Now, this does harken back to when Dijak did the strap match with Thorpe and lashed the sacred tree with the strap a bunch of times. But yeah, it definitely struck me as interesting that they did this segment and presumably are going to do a strap match during Black History Month. That aside, it's certainly the most compelling Thorpe has ever been, and it was actually surprising that they extricated Williams from the NXT title match in a manner that I assumed would eventually become a 4-way, just like the women's match seems to be heading in that direction. Perhaps most notable is the action here was great. The crowd was on its feet, super high energy throughout. Theory and Waller work great together, which is why it's such a shame that they've been marginalized on the main roster. Both of them are supremely talented, separately and together. The back and forth between Oba and Trick, that worked, continues their feud. Now, there are some obstacles in the way. They'll clearly rematch at Stand and Deliver, presumably in singles competition. The men's division, it struggled in NXT of late, but this absolutely played. Theory and Waller are helping immensely. I'll tell you this, man. I would not hate for Theory to return to NXT and spend 6 months as champion. He got called up so fast. He never truly got an opportunity to learn how to carry a title as the top guy on a brand. I know he did it in Evolve and for other promotions, but doing it weekly on TV is different. He needs that in his bag. It would help him massively on the main roster to get a 6-month run with the main NXT title. I'd move him down after WrestleMania, give him a huge run, help rebuild the division, further establish the title, improve himself, then bring him back to the main roster all of a sudden you have a made man. We had Stephanie Vaquer against JC Jane. This opened the show. The Fatal Influence entrance was strange in that Jane was the centerpiece and visual leader, yet Fallon Henley holds the women's North American title. Vaquer did the thigh driller late, adding Eat Defeat and a Meteora. Jane came back with a running knee, but Stephanie hit a 619 and crossbody springboard. Jasmine Nix blatantly broke the fall by running into the ring and hitting JC. But the referee didn't disqualify anyone for reasons I cannot begin to understand. She didn't hit Vaquer purposefully, so it wouldn't be a DQ win. But by hitting Jane, it should have been a DQ the other way. The referee can't know the person's intentions. People turn on partners all the time in wrestling. I've just never seen something like that in a match before, like fully in the ring, breaking up the fall. Anyway, Vaquer hit the package backbreaker. I almost said package pile driver, package backbreaker, got the win. It's called the SVB, as in Stephanie Vaquer backbreaker, which might be the laziest finisher name in history. I think I may have already said this before, but it is. It pisses me off. This woman who speaks 2 languages, we can't come up with a cooler term for a package backbreaker. How about rompedor, which is literally breaker in Spanish? Like, that's a great finisher name. This should not be that hard. Henley taunted Vaquer with the title after the bell. It's a fine build to what should be a solid, it will be a solid, possibly even great PLE match. Henley is massively underrated. Vaquer might actually be a top 5 in-ring wrestler in the women's division across the entire WWE. But the overall booking here did leave something to be desired. Vaquer later cut a parking lot promo that really didn't have the best audio. She said she tears through everything in her path and the eyes of the Dark Angel are on the North American title. She promised to make history again, saying she came to NXT to be champion. Then she told Fallon that her friends can't help her. She'll see her in hell. Lola Vice walked around and past her during this promo. Vaquer being able to cut a promo of that length in clear English proves she is busting ass in whatever language classes she is taking. I took 6 years of Spanish in middle school and high school as well, and can barely string 2 sentences together, let alone paragraphs, like she did on television, by the way. Zarya with Sol Ruca taunted the Meta Girls about falling to Bianca Belair and Naomi, along with Lash individually struggling in the Royal Rumble. Gigi Dolan, Shotzi, and Tatum Baxley, still unnamed as a group, by the way. I know people are calling them Chemical X. I have not seen that official anywhere. They wore the shirts one time. I posted it on social media. WWE doesn't call them that. It's on the website. It's on their bottom third. Nothing. Anyway, they interrupted to basically get the back of the Meta Girls, but it happened without that much reason because they've been heels up to this point. And Zarya has been a face. She was the antagonist here. I usually love these backstage segments. This one was just a strange role reversal, kind of unexplained as well. So we had Dolan and Paxley against Zarya and Ruca. Tatum debuted a move called Spider Inside Her, which was like a facial clench from her own back while locking her opponent's legs with her own. I forget the real name, but it's a real old school move that I've just never seen in modern wrestling. I think I have it on a tape somewhere from like back in the day. It was crazy. Zarya caught Paxley flying and F5'd her into Dolan. As Gigi stood up selling the move, Soul caught her with Soul Snatcher, got the win. She didn't get all of it, but it looked fine from the camera angle that was used. This was a fun as hell match. Dolan and Paxley had more tandem moves. Zarya and Ruca had the finishing sequence, though. I like that Gigi and Tatum were dressed alike, but this group needs a name and it has to get fully established. Man, the ceiling on Tatum Paxley is ridiculously high. She's young. She's super talented. She can cut a promo. She can do character work. Like, I don't want her called up necessarily, but she should be in the main women's division of NXT right now, not kind of working in a tag division where there aren't any tag team titles. I'm not saying anything's bad. I like that she's working with Gigi. I love that they're with Shotzi. All that's great. But Tatum's ceiling is massive. Ethan Page talked shit to Javon Evans backstage with Ava and security between them. Page said he'd crack his head open if he had not made a promise to the final boss. Ava said Evans is not cleared, and he's gotten a physical twice and still not been cleared. So now he's suspended. That way he doesn't attack anymore. Page suggested not suspending him, but punishing him by putting him in a match. So Ava just agrees to book this match at Vengeance Day as long as Evans gets medically cleared. So here we were back to shithead GM Ava, who makes a strong decision and then completely goes back on it just because someone else makes a suggestion. A heel, by the way, making a suggestion. Evans wants to fight. That's why he's been attacking Page, but he's not cleared, so he's putting himself in danger, so she suspended him. That made perfect sense. Page then suggesting they fight 2 weeks from now should not negate the suspension. If anything, Ava should have said, okay, we can do the match if you get cleared, and if you don't get physically involved for the next 2 weeks. Given that was the entire reason she suggested or settled on a suspension at first. Let me be clear, I'm not anti-Ava. There are people who hate her, don't think she should be in the role, think she always does a bad job. I actually think she gets too much criticism for her speaking and just her role overall. But her character sucks. And it's not even being couched as if people are taking advantage of her inexperience or that she's stupid or anything like that. If that was the case, it might actually be interesting. Instead, the way she works as a GM is she makes a decision and she's strong despite being young. And then someone comes in and says, what about this? And she goes, okay. That's not being strong. Being strong is saying, no, it's my way or the highway, not to quote Lexis King, who I'm about to talk about next. But that's really what it should be. And instead, she's a total pushover, and I don't think it's purposeful. And that's probably the worst part. If it was purposeful, it might actually work. Lexis King, I think he says my way, my life, not my way or the highway, but I digress. Lexis King held a Heritage Cup celebration in the ring, saying he can't be humble about his win, given he's on a path to being the GOAT. King's beard was back to being comically painted and lined up. He said he plays by his own rules and wasn't going to be a beta when it comes to this business because he was born into being a psycho like his father, a loose cannon who would do anything to win and never reached his potential. King claimed that he's at his best when he's his father's son and staying true to himself, not taking the advice of legends on how he can change. King then changed the rules of the Heritage Cup. It will no longer be defended with rounds or cornermen, just one fall match, as I promise you we're going to talk about that. Out of nowhere, freaking Fandango interrupted. He now goes by JDC, which I believe is Johnny Dango Curtis, and he's part of the System in TNA. That's a faction. He announced he was challenging for the Cup next week. The other part of this worth mentioning was that one asshole in the crowd just did a long, sustained boo throughout the entire segment. It was awful. It almost ruined it. Credit to King for actually working through it. I feel like I'm the only one who was completely confused by King's part in this segment, primarily his complete turn back to heel. I know he used a low blow in the Heritage Cup, but Charlie Dempsey was cheating as well, and King chose not to pick up the brass knuckles that were in his, bucket. So why now that he won the title as mostly a babyface, at least a tweener, is he a full-on heel again? Is the idea that winning gold has gone to his head and it happened that fast? I just feel like there's something I missed or that NXT skipped as part of this transition. Beyond that, removing every aspect that makes the Heritage Cup special is a massive mistake. They're not my favorite style of matches by any means, don't get me wrong. But now it's just another men's mid-card championship, and nothing is distinctive about it whatsoever. And if that's going to be the case, it should just get rolled into the North American Championship. Now, maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe he's going to wind up fighting Tony D'Angelo or whoever the next North American champion is. They'll win it, they'll combine it, and it's gone. And if that's the case, fine. But if they wanted to move away from rounds, that's a move you can make. But keep something special about it. Make every single Heritage Cup match best 2 out of 3 falls. That way, you don't have to do the rounds and the cornermen or all of that, but you still have to usually get multiple falls in order to retain the cup. Or maybe it's best 2 out of 3 falls with a 15-minute time limit. There are ways that they could have kept this distinctive. Instead, they're just like, no, it's just like everything else, except it's a cup instead of a title. The last thing that NXT needs is another men's singles championship. They need a women's tag team title, if anything. I don't understand this at all. The Fandango return was super unexpected, completely delivered. I was actually kind of pissed off that the first NXT I couldn't watch at all on Tuesday night got spoiled for me with this return. He's so much more confident on the mic now, not saddled by that name and gimmick. It's a massive plus. Should make for a fun one-off match next week. Fraxium backstage were discussing fighting the Nemeth brothers in TNA when Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura gave them credit for putting on bangers and being smart enough to avoid fighting them. Nathan Frazier pointed out that all they've done is talk shit. They haven't even wrestled a match yet.
Thank you!
And so they went to get one made, with Briggs later agreeing to fight Hank and Tank. Inamura apparently asked NQCC for a match simultaneously. Ava took both offers and made it a triple threat. Axiom then said if they win that match, they deserve an opportunity, and Ava simply agreed. I feel like I'm on an island loathing this storyline. Briggs had some momentum doing the JBL stuff and then coming back from Japan, presumably having bettered himself. And then he was immediately put into a situation where he comes across like an utter moron. The guy has suggested his team is deserving of a title match like 4 times, maybe more. They haven't wrestled. Not once. They haven't even done something to force a match into existence, like attacking the champions a few times. They just want a title match. It's nonsensical. So I'm glad Frazier called it out. But now, if they win one match over 2 teams that have never sniffed the championship, they're going to get a title opportunity? Maybe if they beat a former champion like Gallus or something, you could say, okay, they beat the former champions. They're clearly at that level. Let's give them a chance. But Axiom buying into that as acceptable and then the general manager being okay with that pisses me off. If you want these guys to have a title match, that's fine. Book the situation sensibly. They've done this 4 or 5 times. Why couldn't a couple of those be matches? Then they'd have 3 wins and then they would deserve a title match. Like, come on. We had Kalani Jordan against Carmen Petrovic. Lonnie had more mature makeup and darker colored gear, continuing the progression toward a teenager breaking away from her parents' aesthetic. Ashante the Adonis was ringside. Jada Parker confronted moments into the match, allowing Petrovic to hit a tope suicida crossbody. Jordan came back with a really nice Northern Light suplex bridge and a twisting Olympic slam, plus one of a kind, twice. So I guess 2 of a kind. Then she won with, holy shit, a submission hold, a cross-face choke with a body scissors. She even locked it back in after the bell. And that led the referee to reverse his decision and award the match to Petrovic. Perfect segment until the referee reversed his decision. Why? Because there was a break in the submission. If she had kept it locked in through the bell and refused to relent, okay, that switches a tap out to a disqualification, fine. However, Lonnie dropped the move. The bell rang. It was over. The match ended. Then she put it back in. That would be like a referee awarding points to a team in like a game as punishment for a personal foul penalty. Nonsensical stuff from referees twice on this show. That should not overshadow the fact that Lonnie was excellent here. The most interesting she's been in NXT, period. And that's not because of the character change. It's the way she adapted her wrestling and how she no longer attacks the squared circle like a mat for a gymnastics routine. Grounding her offense a bit, extending her moveset, lessening all the high-risk flash, it has made her a better and more believable wrestler. Get the promo game up, and I'll tell you what,
I think you may have something here.
This is why we have been so critical of Lonnie for so long. She was capable of this and much more, and now that's being proven out. I absolutely love to see it. D'Angelo family backstage were putting Tony D over for being on a CW TV show. Stacks shaded him again for being too busy talking to Izzy Dame last week to help their match, but he said he was just breaking balls, and he didn't ultimately mean it. So we had Stacks against Ridge Holland, and D'Angelo family, including Tony, were ringside. Stacks attacked him from behind before the bell. Holland caught him flying off the ropes, hooking both arms for an overhead suplex. That's a really nice sequence that he does, by the way. Izzy again tried to get involved. That allowed Stacks to get a near fall and a roll-up, but Holland took his head off with a lariat, won with Redeemer. The Shawn Spears group watched from the crow's nest. This was all just fine. The Izzy part of it all is interesting because it's clear she's going to align with Ridge or probably the Weirdos sooner than later, but it's an immensely poor use of D'Angelo, who has been a tremendously uninteresting champion to this point. This guy beat Obafemi. He should be getting booked much, much better than this. Holland confronted D'Angelo later, saying he'd take the title in a true one-on-one match. Izzy was there and suggested they fight in a cage so that there's no interference. This as the Weirdos continue to stalk them. So there you go. Perhaps the title changes as soon as next week. NXT ended with another color test teaser. This time, it cut off and 4 different men were shown in the shadows. They were Saquon Sugars, Cutler James, and Deion Lennox. Those were 3. I couldn't 100% place the 4th person. I think Keanu Carver, not totally sure, but having Lennox as part of this was foretold when he stormed out. You'll remember a few weeks ago, he's like, F this place. Sugars, by the way, is Lucky Ali. The guy signed alongside Javon Evans, who is a big-time young independent talent. I presume he's either going to be the leader or the top guy in the group. It feels like it's been a while since a faction debuted as a whole on NXT. So this should be fresh, and I can't wait to see like what their gimmick is, like why they're together and what their mission is. I'm all into this. So that was NXT this week. Not the best episode, but a solid one across the board. That's the thing with NXT. It's what I always say. They'll put on a banger episode, and you'll say, oh my God, this was the best thing I saw all week. And that happens, occasionally. And then every once in a while, you'll get a down episode. But even when you finish the 2 hours, you're like, oh, that was still a valuable thing to watch. Like rarely do you actually get a bad episode of NXT. So it was enjoyable. I wouldn't say it was anything revelatory, but we'll go ahead and guess that they probably peeled back a little bit because next week is the go home for NXT Vengeance Day, which means we will have an NXT Vengeance Day Ultimate Preview for you in this spot next week. Moving over to AEW, Collision was okay. Dynamite was very good. One of the best in a long time, maybe my favorite this year, top to bottom. You know what? Not maybe. It was the best Dynamite of 2025. Like, what am I thinking? Easily the best of the year. Atlanta was a great crowd for the show, and I heard from a few of you who were there in attendance and had a great time, so I'm happy for that. This was a lot more fun than most weeks, and the Death Rider stuff not being near the main event, I think was part of the reason why. 7 of 12 AEW matches this week had storyline relevance, so that's 58%. Lower than we want, better than when Rampage existed. It seems like AEW can now hit 60% regularly without Rampage weighing it down. So we have to raise the goal to 75%. And I don't think that's asking too much, that 3/4 of your matches are completely storyline relevant. So that's the new metric. Let's go through it. Collision and Dynamite by storyline. Toni Storm, under a spotlight, confessed to playing the role of Toni Storm as it was a revelation or something. This was on Collision. She said the loss to Mariah May destroyed her, and she had to rebuild herself. She cursed a few times at Mariah, and I believe said she'd bloody her womb. May have heard that wrong, but I don't think I did. This was unfortunately terrible. I'm convinced that 1/3 of the time, fans just cheer for Toni because they like her and like the gimmick. Most of her promo work usually hits. This was literally nothing. It was a total throwaway. Luckily, Dynamite was the opposite. Storm beat Queen Aminata. There was a short video promo from Aminata on Collision saying she was motivated to fight Toni, but that's not really story build. It was also kind of half-assed. The gimmick here is that Storm played the role of Mariah May for the match. May was speechless on commentary when she came out. She did the whole gimmick, including the entrance beat for beat, and obviously she had the revealing ring gear. She had a wig or weave on. I mean, Toni looked fantastic.
They look good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
She won with Mayday. Aminata had some show out moments, which was really good for her. Serena Deeb watched backstage, like, for what reason? Because she's going to fight Aminata? Okay, maybe. She better not be anywhere near Storm or May. Storm cut a promo as May after the bell and offered a hug. May dipped out. Toni was excellent, so much better, and so much more interesting than Saturday. Disappointed that more did not happen in the post-match, though, to actually further this build. That's an entire week of mostly nothing substantial for a main event. We do have a conversation that we need to have about Grand Slam Australia. I was going to do it this week. Don't have a lot of time to put all my thoughts together. We'll go ahead and do it next week. But, what's happened with this show, changing from what fans in Australia thought was going to be a pay-per-view to a 2-hour TV special that's on tape delay, that doesn't really have the strongest card. A lot of good wrestlers are on the show, but the card isn't that strong. It's a conversation that needs to be had. This was not good from AEW in terms of what they did with Grand Slam Australia. On Collision, Adam Copeland in a tape promo tiptoed the fourth wall, saying no one, including the fans, have any idea about Jon Moxley's motivation or plan. He guessed that Mox is a malcontent who just likes to bitch and moan. Then Copeland shook his head about Moxley hiding the title during a key moment for AEW, debuting on a new network. I assume he meant that didn't help the company, which Mox claims he's trying to help. By the way, they didn't debut on a new network, but on the same 2 channels, and they just happen to also be streaming on Max. Copeland said his generation is responsible for guaranteed contracts and fewer dates, but Mox and his kind are now entitled. Then he challenged for Revolution one-on-one for the first time. Great promo from Copeland. Not that dissimilar in concept from what Gunther said to Jey Uso on Monday night, in that Copeland was speaking for the fans, yet translating that to kayfabe. I was locked in for 90% of it. But once he got to guaranteed contracts and shit, he lost me for a brief moment. But it's what has needed to be said for weeks. And the match challenge was typically strong from him. We'll see if Mox has any response or what comes out of this over the next few weeks. He didn't really say much of anything on Wednesday. In fact, I don't think he cut a promo on Wednesday. So you kind of wanted a response. You wanted Moxley to say, okay, here is our motivation. This is exactly what we want. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. On Collision, FTR beat Death Riders in a Mid-South street fight that went 17 minutes. Saturday's matches were largely shit, but this one was really solid, and everyone wore jeans, which of course is important in a street fight. Thumbtacks were used. Dax Harwood put a hook into Mox's groin, so Marina Shafir came in and just punched him in the nuts with a chain. Then put him in a rear naked choke, broken by Harwood flying backward into a table. He then pile drove Mox on a chair for a near fall. Pile driver into a chair. Near fall. Juxtapose that to a pile driver knocking out Randy Orton for months. I digress. Claudio Castagnoli joins, makes it 4-on-2. Dax takes him out. Monks stomps Dax's head onto a chair for a broken fall. A stomp onto a chair, broken fall. Copeland and Jay White saved 3 minutes later, only because a chair was wrapped around Cash Wheeler's neck. They didn't care about saving any other time that it was 4-on-2, just when the chair got involved. FTR ultimately hit the tandem springboard pile driver off the barricade on Wheeler Yuta through a table to get the 1-2-3 ringside. Nigel McGuinness said, "By the grace of God, this is over." I could not have agreed more. What were Copeland and White doing exactly? Picking their noses? Mox then did his drunken stumbling act, and he ate Shatter Machine, and then he got right to his feet after that and took a spear. They set up Concerto. Claudio saved Mox. I'm not ultimately sure what it's going to take for me to care about this storyline, but this was not close to being it. Some nice moments in the match, but it was basically a B effort. At least it was a worthwhile main event. On Dynamite, White was in the midst of cutting a promo on Death Riders outside to open the show when they appeared to gang up on him, except Rated FTR were waiting in the wings for a 4-on-4 brawl. Obviously, still no woman to match up with Shafir. She actually picked up Renee over her shoulder and ran her away from the brawl, which was kind of funny. This moved all the way out to the ring, where Shatter Machine and a Copeland spear cleared the ring of Death Riders for the second show in a row. Cope challenged for the title again and questioned Mox's manhood, leading him back to the ring to say he deserves nothing and will not get a title match. So White then challenged him for an anything goes Brisbane street fight. Mox didn't reply. I guess the presumption is that match will happen given it's Grand Slam, and then they'll eventually book the title match for Revolution.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not going to do what everyone thinks I'm going to do. Flip out, man.
Because, you know what? This was among the best Death Riders segments since the storyline started. Like, seriously, top 2 or 3. This foursome is legit. It's been booked like a group that actually stands a chance of conquering Mox and taking the title, even though we know they will not. But that's okay. It's hardly the first time in wrestling that's going to be the case. I appreciated the baby faces not only outsmarting the heels at the onset, but also besting them in the end. The only part that bothered me was Mox declining Cope's challenge, because Cope should be someone he respects and sees as a peer, unlike some of the undeserving AEW talent that he's hesitant to accept because they haven't worked hard enough and proven themselves. Copeland has proven himself. That put a cowardice in Mox that is typical in all heels, but really should not exist given his gimmick. I still very much enjoyed it, but I didn't like that one part. On Collision, Kyle Fletcher cut a taped back and forth promo saying he was focused on Grand Slam Australia, but wanted to right a wrong from the Continental Classic by getting a win back over Mark Briscoe, who was down for it, just given his momentum from 2024 has stalled. Simple, logical match setup, despite it being outside of an ongoing storyline. It's not that hard. More of this, please. On Dynamite, Will Ospreay beat Mark Davis, who randomly joined Don Callis' family without really much explanation, given he was previously teaming with the Faces. Callis did say he was under contract with him. Not so much that he changed his mind, but Davis didn't seem to be angry that he was fighting Will. It was very weak. I guess this plays into the tease from last week from Callis about having more numbers, but you'll remember they didn't need more numbers because they easily stood tall with a 4-on-2 beatdown. So now they have 5-on-2 numbers, I guess. Look, obviously the wrestling was quality here. The finish was the referee preventing Davis from using an exposed turnbuckle, which allowed Ospreay to hit Hidden Blade and get the win. The problem here is the same problem that exists in many AEW matches. There is absolutely no reason, not even given their familiarity, that Davis should have taken Ospreay to this length when Will is among your top 5 guys in the company, both as a star and as a wrestler. I'm not saying Ospreay needs to squash him, but it should not be 50-50. And commentary should not be telling us immediately after the bell that Ospreay luckily escaped a half tag team nobody. There was a dragged out promo segment after this match with Ospreay and Kenny Omega basically reiterating their challenge for Australia. Omega said the match was not only for the feud, but to highlight the future of AEW. Then he did his goodbye and goodnight with the bang punctuated by way, way, way too much pyro, but it actually got a laugh out of me. So maybe that was the point. Now that I kind of think about it, I'm wondering if it was a rib on Kenny. If so, it was very funny. The promo was surprisingly weak, but the pyro thing got me. On Collision, Buddy Matthews interrupted a Kazuchika Okada interview saying he was too scared to defend his title. Okada laughed that Matthews doesn't deserve it, so Buddy scratched his forehead with his middle finger and called him a bitch. Commentary told us there was no question Buddy deserves a shot. Really? He's 1-5 in his last 6 singles matches over the last 15 months, and his lone win came against Commander 6 months ago. In what effing world does that make him deserving of a title match against Okada, who just retained the strap fighting through the entire Continental Classic? Dude hasn't won a singles match in 6 months. He's won 1 in 15 months, and it's against Commander. This is just like the Josh Briggs shit in NXT. Let Buddy wrestle a couple dudes, notch some dubs, and then have him challenge for the title. And not dudes like Commander, actual legitimate competitors who win matches. Why is this so hard? You're an in-ring based product. It was blatantly obvious this was just being thrown together for the Australia card, and that was made official on Wednesday. It might steal the show, but it's pathetic booking to just shove it together without making Buddy a legitimate singles competitor first. On Dynamite, Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher beat Hounds of Hell. Okada's coin drop distracted Buddy while he was on the top rope. Fletcher didn't capitalize on it. The faces maintained momentum. Takeshita was late breaking the fall after the double running dropkick. It was actually a 3 count. That just didn't count. They won with a tandem brainbuster, pinning King. Now, the Callis crew does have a major tag team match at Grand Slam. Don't get me wrong, so I understand why they won. But why the hell are you booking this match? Why are you feeding the freshly remixed Hounds of Hell to them, especially without any match build? With all the teams and wrestlers in this company, why was a team that should be in the middle of the title picture used as fodder for the Callis crew to prepare for a special event? At least Matthews didn't take the fall before a title match that he doesn't deserve, but this was terrible booking. Super entertaining in ring, 3.75 stars B+. On Collision, Ricochet in an interview said fans for the last 5 years have told him he should be in AEW because it is where the best wrestle.
Off is a direction you can fuck.
Except after he arrived in AEW, all the fans did was turn their backs on him, threw toilet paper on him, and laughed as Swerve Strickland mocked him. Swerve walked in, took a chair, saying they've never gotten along, and the fans rejected him for trying to play a superhero. Swerve promised a fight in Atlanta against the most dangerous man in AEW, not an athletic exhibition or an innovative match. Ricochet said his bad promos were because he didn't believe in what he was saying and he was trying to play to the fans. That's not true. Then he mentioned Hangman, so Swerve grabbed the scissors and put them to his throat. It was one of Ricochet's better speaking segments ever. Swerve coming in added some much needed firepower to it, just given Rick is still monotone and boring, and much of what he says just doesn't land with the gravitas necessary to be an A-side, but he's a great B-side. The scissor thing obviously took me out of it. It remains immensely stupid to be continuously threatening to slit someone's throat in wrestling promos and segments. Like, give me a break. On Dynamite, we got Swerve and Ricochet. Swerve took a chair shot to the back during his entrance. Ricochet quickly hit Vertigo for a false finish. On the barricade, Rico tried to jump up, but Swerve caught him for a powerbomb right on top of the structure. Great spot. Cool counter sequence ending with World's Strongest Slam by Swerve. He added House Call and Swerve Stomp for a false finish. Ricochet botched and attempted over-the-rope Poison Rana. Instead, he settled for a German suplex on the apron, plus a springboard 450 back inside and a shooting star press to Swerve's back. Swerve countered Spirit Gun with a mid-air House Call, but Ricochet blocked Swerve Stomp with a low blow in clear view of the referee. Then he hit Spirit Gun and got the win. Then he stole Prince Nana's robe at the end of the show. I love that Ricochet won. I love the way he won with the possibly inadvertent but still low blow. I hated that it was the Spirit Gun that ended it when he easily could have jumped on the ropes and landed a 630 or anything else to add emphasis and make it even more impactful. Could definitely see this getting run back at Revolution with Swerve getting a win, and that would be great if they do that. Hopefully this ends the Swerve Stomp as well, because you know I hate that as much as I hate the Spirit Gun. I should say almost as much as I hate the Spirit Gun, but especially as a finisher. 4 stars A-, match of the week for AEW, right there with CM Punk and Sami Zayn for match of the week overall. On Dynamite, MVP and Hurt Syndicate again put over Private Party before warning the rest of the locker room that they will hurt them and take their titles. The Guns answered and got a really nice, maybe even somewhat surprising pop. I love their entrance always. MVP respected their moxie and courage for challenging, accepted the title match for next week while throwing a dig that they're a couple of ass boys. Not the greatest segment, but 2 massively over teams starting a feud or at least having a title match that helps towards revitalizing this absolutely dead division. A bit strange to have the Guns come back and then lose right away. Perhaps they should have beaten a couple other teams first. You know, I always prefer challengers earn it, but at least they're former champions. The segment was entertaining. On Collision, Harley Cameron beat Taya Valkyrie for her first ever televised singles victory. She won by countering a lazy cover into a crucifix pinning combination. Harley has since beaten 2 jobbers on the Jericho Cruise. I don't know if they're going to use that to artificially inflate her profile. Given Cameron is going to be thrown into something for the Australia show, it probably would be nice to get her a real victory, but it was still a nice moment for her. Harley later backstage did ventriloquism with a Mercedes Moné puppet, which told her that she wanted to wrestle her in Australia. Mercedes then came by as they were like dancing, saying Cameron is entertaining, but a loser. Pretty fun, all things considered. Mercedes puppet announced on Dynamite that Harley will be live in concert Saturday. The puppet then apologized for Moné, who came out of her locker room and appropriately downplayed Cameron getting one win and deserving a title match, and again called her a loser. Harley gave her the finger behind her back. Very funny segment, as usual, with Cameron. Clearly, they're going to do the match. I hope Harley at least beats someone of significance before that happens. I did get a laugh on social media as Mercedes or Harley, I forget which one, posted a picture of Moné's dog, Ryu, chewing on the puppet, which I just thought was hilarious. By the way, top tier name for a dog, Ryu. Not sure why, but I've just always liked it when I heard it. By the way, if I didn't say it already, Harley is incredibly skilled as a ventriloquist. Not so much from like an impression standpoint, but her ability to actually do it while operating the puppet and then working back and forth with her real voice, it's like top tier, man. As I have said before, she is among the most talented wrestlers in the world when it comes to overall entertainment talent and ability. She can act, she can sing, she can do ventriloquism, she can clearly wrestle. I mean, holy crap, this woman can do a million things. So massive, massive talent AEW has on their hands there. On Collision, Chris Statlander backstage told Willow Nightingale that they have good and bad history, but she's asking for forgiveness because she's sorry. Willow scoffed, saying Chris isn't ready to hear what she has to say to her. Nightingale wanted to focus on herself, so Stat showed a friendship bracelet saying this was never broken. On one hand, I'm glad they did this. On the other, if Willow forgives her solely because she didn't snap a piece of plastic, unless we get some meaning behind that, it's going to be laughable. So I'm going to hold off of any take for that right now. On Collision, the Beast Marto squashed a jobber in less than a minute. Max Caster then entered and basically repeated himself 3 times, saying his challenge series was beginning. Roosh answered wearing a new bull mask and shoulder pads. He looked badass. Then he squashed Caster in 1 minute. Remember in November when these guys were managed by Jake Roberts for 2 weeks? That was fun. Remember last week when I said I might be buying the Caster gimmick? Never mind. Roosh then cut a promo reminding Mortos that they're in a group together before saying his catchphrase twice. But when they left, Mortos didn't do the hand gesture with them. I don't even know what to say about that. On Dynamite, Hangman Page was in the middle of a promo about retiring Christopher Daniels when Caster interrupted, hoping he would put someone like Anthony Bowens or Billy Gunn in the hospital. Hangman obviously turned his attention to Caster, who ran off to the parking lot with Page following. Okay, so I was out on the Caster gimmick Saturday. They got me back in on Wednesday. This is really funny. I guess I'll have to just give it a bit of run, but I'm frustrated that Bowens has disappeared when his whole Pride of AEW gimmick should have been capitalized upon immediately. The Hangman face turn is slowly but surely progressing. I'm interested to see how they do it because it started out violently, retiring a babyface legend, and yet this is meant to be a face turn. So on Dynamite, MJF cut an in-ring promo telling Jeff Jarrett he's not elite, and now he's cleared him away so he can focus on regaining the title. Caster ran into the ring trying to escape Page, with MJF screaming to get out of the ring, not realizing what was happening. Hangman stormed right up to MJF, said something, and then continued chasing Caster into the crowd. Dustin Rhodes then interrupted, angry about MJF talking shit about legends and people with addictions. Dustin said he's the last of his kind, he's better than MJF, and his punk ass knows it. MJF shot back, but Dustin took 37 years to get out of Dusty's shadow. He called him Goldie, and he was on his way to saying that Dustin is now living in the shadow of Cody when Rhodes just swung. They fought and got separated. MJF ultimately caught him with a low blow, pretty much as the whole thing ended. CD then jumped back when MJF threatened him because he's now scared of wrestlers because he lost a match. I don't really know. Dustin later challenged to fight MJF next week in Texas. The show is being taped Tuesday but airing Wednesday, which led to a ton of confusion on AEW TV and social media because they kept saying both days. I get that their idea is to increase ticket sales through TV promotion. That's fine. But you cannot have wrestlers cut promos telling people to tune in to watch on the wrong day. 95% of your viewers won't be at that show. Cater to them first. I'm glad they're slow building MJF and Hangman, but they are force feeding it a bit too much, having them interact randomly every single week. They just need to space it out a little bit more. This was better than any of the Jarrett segments because Dustin's a better and more passionate promo. MJF also has legitimate history with Cody and the family, so there's actually something to build upon here, but it really just seems like they're going to do a match then move on from it. This just being an appetizer to get back to Jarrett, though, that doesn't really make it that exciting overall. Still a better segment than most recently. On Collision, the TNT title was on the line. Daniel Garcia beat Kyle O'Reilly and Lee Moriarty to retain his title in 12 minutes. There were some nice wrestling sequences, but this was such an eye-roll match, not only from a challenger standpoint, but with Garcia once again winning via jackknife cover. Every single match. It's one thing to escape more talented competition by catching them in that move, but after like 10 straight wins using a pinning combination, for challengers to not be scouting that is ridiculous. As is Garcia not winning with an actual finisher against Moriarty, who could easily take a loss. Shane Taylor Promotions threatened to attack, so Undisputed Kingdom, Daddy Magic, and Angelo Parker all saved. Adam Cole has gone from feuding with MJF and beating Malachi Black to fending off literal jobbers. It was announced before the segment even ended that there would be a 3-way trios match, and there was even a graphic already made. This technically has been a story that's getting told, but it is nowhere close to a good one. On Collision, the Learning Tree beat the Outrunners in 8 minutes as Big Bill prevented Total Recall and Brian Keith locked in a small package. Bill then destroyed them and was about to do a double chokeslam through a table when Bandito returned, hitting a tornado splash on Chris Jericho and dropping Keith almost headfirst into a table. I truly hated every single part of this. Outrunners' momentum has been crushed, and then they go ahead and lose this match that they easily could have won. They just could have pinned Keith. Bandito's return is then wasted, saving baby faces with whom he has nothing in common, fighting against a painful mid-card group he has no specific reason to dislike. This multiple weeks after the multiple vignettes promoting his return just stopped.
What is going on?
On Dynamite, Big Bill video package was followed by another New York minute. Jericho challenged Bandito to fight Brian Keith, an actual bounty hunter, to collect the bounty. Powerhouse Hobbs then attacked 1-on-3. Security separated them, and ultimately...
Oh, we got two big meaty men bumping me tonight!
And it just kind of petered out from there, which was disappointing. After commercial, Hobbs and Outrunners were pushing them out of the arena along with security. It's not doing much for me. Hobbs and Bill, sure, I don't care about these groups fighting. On Collision, Samoa Joe and Hook beat the Patriarchy in 9 minutes. This feud is really getting stretched out, and it was botched, with Chaz's TV return not even being a moment. Hook and Christian Cage fought 3 weeks ago. Joe got the fall on Kip Sabian after a muscle buster. Cage attacked with the metal contract holder. I wonder what the plans are for that contract at this juncture. Maybe Christian inserts himself in the Copeland match? Not really an interesting segment on Collision. On Dynamite, Joe and Hook did their Vincent and Jules thing again backstage before invading the Patriarchy locker room to find Christian. He wasn't there, the others were, so they beat the shit out of them, with Christian running away when he poked his head in. Apparently, Nick Wayne's mom was fine with Cage not helping her son and even playing dumb to it after the fact. This was meh. The Hook-Joe Pulp Fiction interactions, they give Hook personality, but it's only temporary. On Collision, Megan Bayne beat a jobber in 90 seconds with an F5. She looked and worked great. As long as this was the only squash, that's fine. Commentary underdelivered. They basically just told us that she's great, and they didn't sell her moves or tell us anything really about her. I'd have preferred a promo package to this. Hopefully we get one soon. And lastly, on Collision, there was a back-and-forth promo for Thunder Rosa versus Penelope Ford next week. I appreciated the effort, and it was better than last week's bullshit backstage segment. But the promos where they know what the other is saying and they keep talking, it's just ridiculous. There was also a hologram vignette where he was walking on the street wearing a hooded jacket with his mask on, and he took electricity out of his pocket or something. Oh, there was also a Leo Rush and Action Andretti tape promo where they tried to act hard but said absolutely nothing. These guys remind me of dudes that think they're cool in high school but don't actually hang out with the cool kids. That's Leo Rush and Action Andretti. So that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, Dynamite, very good episode. The best of 2025. Super enjoyable. Collision, largely a waste of time, which it really shouldn't be, especially now that AEW is down to 4 hours. We have a little time left here before I need to go. We did not talk about ratings last week. We have them for this week because we taped late. So let's just quickly go ahead and go over both of them. NXT last week, 827,000, 0.19 demo. Fantastic numbers this week. 766,000, 0.20 demo. Down in viewers. Up in demo from last week. Fourth straight week above 750,000. Fourth straight week above 0.17. That is the best 4-week stretch since June based on demo, and the best 4-week stretch overall since October 2023. NXT is hot right now. The shows are really good. The women's division is carrying this brand. People need to recognize that. It is awesome to see this flip where the NXT show is buoyed by the women, with the men having a role, unlike the main roster where the men largely carry both shows and the women have a role. It's awesome. As for AEW Dynamite, I'm not sure I've ever seen 2 weeks where the ratings are basically identical. Last week, 604,000 viewers, 0.17 demo. This week, 605,000 viewers, 0.17 demo. They still haven't crossed that 700,000 threshold since September 25th. And the demo, of course, not hitting 0.2. That hasn't happened since November 20th. That said, now that it's streaming on Max and younger viewers are certainly more likely to stream than watch on television, it's quite possible that there's enough contingent there that would, if you added it to the TBS broadcast, that it would be 0.20 or higher. But look, the numbers aren't great. They remain not great. I don't think it's because they're on Max. There's no way that like 100 or 150,000 people are watching on Max. They haven't proven to have that viewership over the last few months. So it just continues to kind of, go along and do decently enough. I go back to the TV deals, the one NXT signed with the CW discount, what AEW signed with Warner Brothers Discovery. I mean, it still boggles my mind. But again, all it takes is a couple hot storylines, a couple hot gimmicks, a couple hot shows to turn things around and boost the ratings and get more attention on the product. The question is going to be, when do those happen and do those things happen? Ultimately, we will find out in the future. So look, next week we have an absolutely loaded show in this spot. It's going to be a double Ultimate Preview episode. NXT Vengeance Day, AEW Grand Slam Australia. Yes, that is just going to be a Collision special, but we will still do an Ultimate Preview. There's a big main event match, of course, Mariah May and Toni Storm, and then there's other big people on the card. It's not a premium live event. I wouldn't necessarily consider it even a Saturday night's main event, just the way this has transpired. We're going to have a conversation about Grand Slam Australia on its own. But again, next Thursday, double Ultimate Preview episode right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Of course, between now and then, we will be back on Tuesday with your next WWE show. And if you missed it this week, we have a huge WWE show for you with a long conversation about Jey Uso as the Royal Rumble winner and a potential WrestleMania main eventer. We know he'll have a title match on the show. The question is, will that actually main event? Listen to all of that this week. Join us next week, WWE Tuesday, double dose, Ultimate Preview, next Thursday, right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, reminders first that this show
is all about Defy.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget, subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up to get bonus audio, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts as well. Support the continuation of Getting Over. We would greatly appreciate your financial support. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. It has been a fantastic week already here in New Orleans. Hoping for a few more amazing days. Can't wait to talk to you all again next Tuesday. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.